Okay. And take Glenn off mute, please.
There, I can get that for you.
All right.
Just to let everyone know that they can unmute themselves.
Okay.
If I put them on mute to keep things quiet, they can unmute.
Okay, sure. Okay. Welcome everybody. My name's Patrick Donahue. Welcome to a bit of an experiment we're having, given the COVID-19 situation. We're having our Sointula virtual community meeting with the specific subject tonight on the Sointula Volunteer Fire Department funding, and we're going to have a presentation discussion. So without further ado, we will get started. So I'll just play around with my screen here. So welcome. As I said before, we're doing a bit of an experiment with the regional district and how we're going to consult with our communities. Obviously, we're using Zoom to maintain the safety of social distancing and hopefully make this meeting easier to attend. So obviously tonight, as I said, the discussion will be funding needs for the Sointula Volunteer Fire Department, but also if this event is successful, we'll consider holding even other events if you get feedback from the community on other issues. Right now, we're looking at trying to get feedback from the community in the near future about street lights, invasive species, and who knows what other issues may come up. So for the agenda for tonight, we're going to introduce presenters. One of them hasn't signed in yet, but hopefully that'll happen soon. We'll be doing some housekeeping rules, a bit of a background, introduce the protection service area, review the current and future priorities of the fire department, as well as also doing major capital expenditures, the proposal for increasing the tax requisition, and explain the process for the assent of the electors, and then we'll have time for follow-up questions. Now, first off, for the presenters, I'm hoping that Tom Trimmer will be able to sign in soon. We've got Nicole keeping a lookout for him. Tom has been the chief since 2007 with over 35 years of being a member of the fire department. Glenn Watson, who's the deputy chief, will be also doing some of the presenting. He's been the fire department members for 21 years. I believe you were since 99, right, Glenn? And myself, I'm the operations manager, but I'm also a volunteer firefighter with the High Creek Volunteer Fire Department, and I've been there for 25, 26 years. So I'm a bit well versed in what goes on with volunteer fire departments. So with that in mind, we're going to have the housekeeping rules. We're trying to keep the video and the microphones down just to conserve bandwidth. That being said, you can unmute yourself if you want to talk. If you have a question or comment, we would prefer if you use the chat function. So you just type in your message and send it to the organizer. The call is going to be keeping an eye on.
It's a chatting function.
Is that okay? That's a good question. For those of you who don't understand the chat, if you take your cursor and go to the bottom of the screen, you'll see a bar of different functions, one of which is called chat. If you click that, it enters in sort of like a way of sort of typing in questions or comments and that. And while I won't be focusing on that, Nicole will be, and she's going to bring to my attention if questions come up so we can answer them right away. So we want to be able to have a dialogue, not have us just talk at people. That being said, abusive behavior will not be tolerated. This session is also going to be recorded and will be posted on the regional district website. So if you know of others who couldn't make it and they want to see what was being said, there will be a link at the front of the regional district website, which will allow you to get access to it. And if you have if afterwards you have questions, please just send us an email to info@rdmw.bc.ca, and we'll try and answer those questions as promptly as possible. So, without further ado, we'll get started. So, I'm going to have Glenn go over sort of the operational and talk a little bit about the capital expenses. So he and I can contribute on that one as well. And then I'll be talking more about the process of the taxation, the costs, and the process for increasing things. Okay, Nicole just sent me a note. Those on it can use the chat bubble to chat with a regional district about Waddington. They can choose a private or for everyone. So if you want your question, if you want to have ask a question, but you don't really want to stand out, you just sort of choose the RDMW option, and then on the pull down, and then that one will just go to us, or you can just go everyone, and everyone will see the question. So it's you have those options. So okay, I'm going to carry on unless there's any questions. Nope. Okay. The origins of the fire department go back to the 60s and probably earlier, but it was only made a regional district local service back in 1989. So, and the last approved increase in the funding was in 2004, where the limit was put at $41,000 per year. In 2006, the current pumper truck was purchased for service. Things were fairly stable until 2015, when the province of British Columbia released the minimum training standards, edition number 2, which Glenn can tell you was a really big shakeup. Up to that point, training was basically done as per whatever the fire departments felt needed to be done. But when the new training guidelines came out, it set expectations for what the firefighters were needed to have mastered, either through their department or through external courses. And at that point, it put a lot more responsibility on the leadership of the departments as well as the members to be able to demonstrate competencies in the base skills of the fire department. And which that meant as well is that training had to be done a lot more frequently, both within the department and sometimes going down island. And following that, the regional district at Waddington had to make a declaration of the level of service. And in the case of the Sointula Fire Protection Service, the level is out of exterior operations, which means at this point in time, the members are limited in how they can go into buildings if the conditions are dangerous, as opposed to departments like Port McNeill or Hyde Creek or Port Hardy, which do interior operations. But the department goal is to achieve that level in the future. So the next thing I was going to show you too is just to give you an idea of what the area that the fire department protects. As you can see, it goes all the way along Caliva Road, and then it ends on the other direction towards it, past to the First Street and down into some of the more rural parts on the western part of the island. Oh. Okay, sure. Actually, I just got a question right now. Was the 2004 funding $41,000 increase or a total budget? It was a total budget. The $41,000 was raised up, I think, in anticipation too of a purchase of a pumper, which I guess they knew was going to be coming around. The pumper didn't arrive until 2006, so $41,000 is the total funding, though there is the ability that the requisition can be 5% above that without having to go to a referendum or electoral consent process. But yes, the current bylaw says $41,000 total budget. And thanks, Nicole, for pointing that one out. So, Glenn, if you want to talk about the just a review of the current and future priorities for the fire department on the operational budget, I think that would probably give people a bit of an understanding of what we're trying to deal with.
Yeah, sorry, on the which in particular?
The current and future priorities for the budget, like the operational budget, that the stuff that you deal with on a year-by-year basis, not the what we've identified is what needs to be done year after year after year.
Right, and that's it's kind of a broad topic for sure. There's a number of things that, again, like Patrick was mentioning there, we've in the recent last, I guess, 4 years now, we've sort of gone from a transition of where the fire commissioner's office would say, this is what is absolutely required of your departments. And there was very little leeway. It was either you were compliant or you were not. They gave some sort of allowance for remote communities to, I guess, get away with less than compliant. So what happened in, I guess it was about 2016, was it, Patrick, when the playbook came out?
2016.
They sort of acknowledged that small volunteer departments were almost impossible to meet the requirements of the larger career departments, and they've sort of designed this thing around the fact that we can sort of be the, within reason, we can actually say this is what we are capable of doing and this is what our members are trained at doing, with goals laid out for what we should be able to do. So basically what it comes down to is we have the power to say we're capable of doing this and go ahead and do it. The only sort of, there's no checks and sort of, I don't know what it would be. We're not really assessed on anything up until the fact that there's an accident or something of the sort. So that's what we've been basing a lot of our budgetary sort of preparation for, is just knowing that we may be able to get away with some of the stuff as long as nothing goes wrong. But the idea is if we have something as simple as a length of hose fail when we're in a compromising position, that's when everything goes sideways. And what they're trying to do is sort of pass off liability to the individual departments, which eventually ends up being on the chief, deputy chief, and officers, and of course regional district too. So how we're looking at these things is not just in required training for our members, but what we need to be able to do to function safely, even the simplest of situations. So a lot of the things we're looking at in the short term are things like hoses. We have some hoses in the department which have been around for far too long. There isn't actually a time limit on how long you're allowed to have hose for, but there's some restrictions that we don't fully meet on some of our secondary truck. So what we're anticipating is the requirement of testing in the future, hose testing, ladder testing, all these things that we typically have avoided up until in the past 2 years, where they're sort of pressuring us to get into that department. So we're looking at hoses. Hoses are one thing that comes to mind right now. Is that's going to be a big one. They're ridiculously expensive for a hose, but they're ultimately the most important safety tool we've got when it comes to any kind of a fire. So we're looking at tens of thousands of dollars over the coming few years to replace even just the hose we have on the old truck. And the new truck, eventually, when it starts getting to be tested and those fail, they'll have to be replaced on as things go. Other things are the day-to-day issues we have. Radios, for example, another thing that's a real simple thing, but every radio we've got is $400 or $500 to replace. Pagers, they happen. We have some of those get dropped in a puddle or back over in a car. The accidents happen, and those things are also incredibly expensive. They're $400 or $500 too, I believe, Patrick.
Oh yeah.
So it's really a culmination of a bunch of little things that are required, as well as just the knowing what can go wrong. We've had that compressor. I'm not even sure that compressor predates me. It's been in the hall, even when it was back in the old fire hall. So that's back in before '99. That thing, if we were to replace that thing now, it failed. I mean, it's tested yearly. for the air and the mechanics on it. But if it does fail, we have no contingency for it, and that's upwards of $30,000 to replace now.
Yeah.
So it's all these little things that above and beyond just the actual setting aside funds for the truck is what we're looking at as trying to just be more oriented around safety, being as how now they're looking at us, and it's a litigious atmosphere out there now. They love to sue for anything. Somebody breaks an ankle or they don't feel we did a good job putting out the fire, we're ultimately the one that ends up having to answer to it now, as where in the past we were sort of, it was fielded more by the fire commissioner's office. They've now, in exchange for allowing us the freedom of assessing our own departments, we are also putting ourselves in the hot seat for responsibility and liability. So that's just an overview of some of the things we're looking at as far as the larger non-day-to-day stuff. It's, you know, tools are another good one. That's we have a chainsaw, for example, on the truck, works 99% of the time, but it's probably 45 years old, an old steel. So we have lots of places where, you know, we have to prioritize what we most need as we have the available funds, as hopefully our budget is expanded. And yeah, there's no shortage of place to put it for the next few years for sure, as we try to get sort of back on top of gear and maintenance that we've been behind on for quite a while.
Actually, I was going to jump in. Oh, sorry.
Yep. But just to let you know, Tom, I don't think he's in here yet. He's down right now. Merm just got out of the hospital from surgery, so he's down there with her, and they have virtually no cell signal or internet. So I'm not sure if he's going to make it or not. Here it looks like.
Yeah, thanks, Glenn. Another thing we should probably point out too is right now the department is doing outstanding in its recruitment and retention. It's I believe we've got about 18 members, 13 which are considered operational. That great success in itself lent us to a cost. One of the items we have here is turnout gear, which is basically the coat, the pants, the helmets, the boots, the balaclavas, and a lot of the accessory piece of equipment. To fully fit out a firefighter nowadays costs $7,000, if not, I don't know, $3,500. So, and the turnout gear is only good for 10 years. If you had a firefighter that got in an accident and it was found out that the gear was in excess of 10 years, it gets into an uncomfortable discussion, and that's one of the things too the fire department is going to have to work with, because the recruitment has been quite successful recently, and also holding on to these people. And you know, you normally don't go out and spend $3,500 on the first week someone shows up, but after a certain period of time, when when their competency builds up, so they become more and more effective, then you need to get you need to be able to fit them out with equipment. And after 10 years, if they're still there, that equipment has to be replaced again. Looks like we have a question from Linda. Does the department have enough liability insurance to cover the officers? The liability insurance that we have is the Municipal Insurance Association of British Columbia. So yes, we have a deep pockets on the for liability insurance, but if an officer, it's not just the liability insurance that an officer has to be aware of too. If there's an accident and it's when our firefighters, though they're volunteers, they are covered by WorkSafe BC. And if there's considered gross negligence and someone gets hurt, it can be more than just a fine. There's potential actually for fairly harsh punishments. And the officers that are involved, I mean, if you're the incident commander or you're the fire chief, the questions will always come back if there's something that doesn't seem to work out right. Why was this person doing something they weren't trained for? Why was the equipment, why was that person's helmet 15 years old when they got hit on the head? So while we might have liability insurance, and all our firefighters also have death and disability insurance and work safe coverage to give them some protection if something were to happen during the line of duty. Sometimes the culpability goes beyond just liability, so we really need to give the members and their leaders the resources so that they can do their jobs properly and not have to work, second guess themselves whether or not what they do as a volunteer is going to intrude drastically into their private and their family lives.
We had a meeting with, I believe you were actually there too, Patrick, back at one of our most recent chiefs meetings down in, I guess down in Victoria. And we had a couple of lawyers that actually worked for from the company that covers the whole province virtually, most of the province.
Yeah. And
they gave us basically a rundown of what's going to happen after, you know, insurance kicks in and they start looking for compensation. That's when these guys, they kind of put the fear of God into the entire room at that point. And so sort of instructed towards the new chiefs and stuff at the time. And it was a real eye opener, just the fact that, like Patrick was saying there, it's insurance is one thing, but the moment, and one of the early things that they try to show is negligence. Maybe not necessarily gross negligence, but even if they can show negligence, it can be the simplest of things, that you didn't have a operating procedure for functioning on a ladder, that your ladder wasn't tested in that previous year, that your member wasn't trained in the previous 6 months on how to use that ladder, and whether his boots that he was standing on that ladder were recent enough and had, you know, been inspected for fire damage. There's a long list, a really sort of it's an impressive list that they go through each time trying to get their money back. So all they've got to do is prove that we were negligent at any step along that way, saying, well, you didn't maintain your ladder. That's it. They don't have to go any further. They've now proved that we were negligent in it and our insurance is of limited use to us. So there's a lot of things. It's a scary situation that they tried to pose at you. Say that it's not, you know, they're not trying to scare people out of this, but just to be aware that the more expensive the fire is that we're attending, the more likely you're going to be sued. And this comes from both the property insurance and health insurance if somebody decides to sue us. So
yeah, and in fact also, I mean, we talk about the equipment. I mean, one of the things that as you go along, you'll notice on the slide up there, like we're talking about $55,000 is what Glenn and I sat down and felt was on a year-to-year basis for the operations, not for the capital, but for the operations. This is what would be needed for the department to have a good chance of making a good headway to the requirements that are there for a fire department. And then if you look at the budget right now, it's 41,000. Even when we were able to we went that 5% extra that brought up to just over $42,000. That shortfall has to be made up in that the guys don't, or the members don't do as much training as is desirable. Or maybe we don't replace the turnout gear, even though we have members that are considered more and more operational. They're now wearing gear that's old. And if we want to send them down to get some advanced training so that they're that much more competent in carrying out their duties, I think, Glenn, you said you've had members turn back from these courses because the training won't take them because their equipment's out of date. Is that not true?
yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's been one of the drawbacks. We put a big push on it for in the last year and in this year's budget, trying to make up for that, because we had actually a good turnout in the last few years getting some new members, and we've got a pretty good roster right now. But our problem is we can do in-house training all day long with old gear, as long as we understand that what we're doing is safe. But as soon as we send somebody off to Comox, Nanaimo, or even Port Hardy for training with somebody else, they will, I mean, it's a liability thing. If they look at the label inside their jacket and it's more than 10 years old, they just say sorry. I mean, we've had it where they offered to give us, a replacement helmet or a jacket or something in order to to fill the gap. But yeah, absolutely. If we don't have the bare minimum that the sheets say, if it says 10 years, they will say no a second it's a month old. So that's definitely something that's been a priority for us more recently. We've managed to get 5 sets of gear just in the last I guess 13, 14 months here, getting the people who we've identified as most likely to be interested in training towards their, we're hoping to get back into, again, staying off topic, but we back to where the playbook came out and we had to identify our departments as capable for interior or exterior firefighting. And our department was, we didn't have at that time enough people with our firefighter 1 or live fire training under our belts. So we identified as exterior with the plans of getting back to interior. So when we identified those people, we prioritized getting them the gear so we can now send them off to like the Comox Fire Center and all that for these courses legally, and everybody can be happy. So it's a balancing act when you only have so much to go on. I know when we sat down before last year's budget with Patrick, we were hoping to get 4 sets of gear, and we could only scrape together enough to get 3 and follow it up with, as soon as our budget rolled over, we got the 2 more the very next day. So that's where we're heading towards, and we have a lot more work to go there as well. When we got 14 members, technically we need to be getting just shy of 2 sets of gear every year, with the anticipation of keeping a 10-year set, in service always.
Yeah, and the other thing is that I think if you look at the trends, the requirements going to be on the fire departments, whether they're volunteer or paid, they're not going to be scaled back. I know on the Hyde Creek Fire Department, we're actually beginning to talk about fully committing our members to taking a course that will actually give us third-party designation which is a firefighter 1, which is basically the core skill sets that a professional firefighter would have. And it's already Port Hardy and Port McNeil have gone that way too. And as I said, it may well be that the choice of whether or not we go down route will be taken away from us as the standards keep going up. We got some questions here. First, Marjorie, are there any programs where career fire departments who may replace gear more frequently donate or resell gear to volunteer departments gear that is still valid, but perhaps only a few years left? Generally not, Marjorie. A lot of the equipment, when a department feels that its time has come, they often will actually donate it to developing countries for their fire services, because they can't afford to have the equipment that we have. So I know Nicaragua, El Salvador have actually received some of our old equipment. Sometimes if a department's in a bit of a jam for equipment, we have what's called the North Island Fire Chiefs Association, which Glenn is an active participant, and so am I. And sometimes a department might be able to cough up some equipment and pass it on. We've been very fortunate with Port Hardy in passing on some of their equipment. But the thing is also is that you're very much at the mercy as to what that size that equipment is, because if you're going into fairly intense environment, which is what we were dealing with in the fire department, you want your equipment to fit properly. And basically, when the full-time professional fire departments deem their equipment to be no longer serviceable, it's probably not something that you want to risk your members in either. Next question from Nancy Walsh. I can't see anyone complaining about the modest increase that this budget would require. Well done. Assessments have increased, and that should make any increase tolerable. Thank you. Okay. Bear with me. Sorry. My apologies on that one. That was a private. Sorry. Anyway, so let's carry on to the next slide. So we were just, as Glenn was sort of touching on, some major capital purchase in the next 5 years. You know, Glenn was talking about structural fire hoses, probably about $10,000 worth coming up. The SCBAs of the department are getting older and older. At a certain point in time, you can't get the replacement parts. I know that WAS recently had to do the same thing and had to replace their SCBAs because frankly, the technician that inspects them every year was not willing to sign them off anymore. So in the next 5 years, we could be it's a good chance we'll be looking at having to get secondhand self-contained breathing apparatus because Sointula uses what are called low pressure systems. And I don't think they don't make those anymore. They're all now going to the high pressure, which has twice the air capacity, but they go for about $7,000 or $8,000 a piece. And the truck, I believe, has 8 packs, if I remember correctly. So we would be hoping to hold over with good quality refurbished secondhand packs for about $20,000. And the other thing that we want to get done in the next 5 years is that when the hall was constructed, there was a lot of elements that weren't finished, like the floors are still plywood, and there's some general improvements that are needed to get that weren't considered. What was it, about 20 years ago when the hall was built? I'm not sure the exact timeline. So we're looking at the next 5 years of probably about $45,000 on top of just the regular operational costs. And then Glenn also touched upon some of the major capital expenses in the distant future. We've got a breathing air compressor that is well over 20 years old. If that has to be replaced, it'll be about a $40,000 purchase. And as I was talking about earlier, the Sointula, just like Hyde Creek, we use low pressure air packs to give us about half an hour air supply. It's not too hard to expect that at some point in the future, WorkSafe BC is going to make a dictate that the low pressure packs were no longer acceptable for fire departments. Installation will force us to the high pressure, which would mean that we would have to replace the packs. We're figuring about $70,000, and that would also mean that the air compressor would also have to be replaced. So some fairly large ticket items in the where we think in more than 5 years, but something we have to be cognizant of. Okay, now the one thing we also want to talk about is probably the most expensive piece of equipment that the fire department has. The current pumper was purchased in 2006. The Fire Underwriters Survey, which is the body that lets insurance companies know whether or not what level fire protection community has, which then turns around and allows them to set property insurance. Their policy is that a fire truck is no longer serviceable after 20 years. It doesn't matter whether it has 200,000 kilometers on it or 500. Recently, though, they've been allowing things to ease up, and we have seen situations with small departments similar to Sointula being allowed to use their truck for 25 years. But once that time period is up, if that truck isn't replaced, the underwriters could then determine that department doesn't have a truck because they don't recognize it, and the fire department without a truck provides no service, which would mean that a community goes from protected or semi-protected to unprotected, and I'll talk about the financial impacts of that. Fortunately, the Sointula truck is in excellent shape, and as a proactive measure, we test it annually to demonstrate it's meeting its performance standards. This is why we believe that we can get 25 years of service out of this truck. But that still means that in 2031, we're going to be looking at having to replace a truck. And based on current prices and historical inflation of costs, that means that we're estimating that in 2031, the department is going to be looking at a $590,000 purchase to get a new truck. as I said, it's a situation that we were confronted in Hyde Creek back in 2007. As I said, it makes a lot of sense that if you can put some money aside to build up your savings, then the debt load isn't so extreme. And it also means that the transition and the funding is, you can actually have it ramped up as opposed to having a huge increase. So the spreadsheet below is a bunch of numbers, and probably you can't, they don't see, but this basically shows the modeling that we did. What we've recommended to the community, the staff at the regional district, is that we ramp up how much money we put into a truck reserve. So we increase it by 5,000 a year, so go from 5 to 10 to 15 to 20, all the way up to 30,000, and then we level off and just keep that 30,000, only increasing it by an inflationary amount. If we were to do that, we project that we would have approximately $380,000 towards a $590,000 purchase, which would then be able to, given maintaining our contributions to the truck fund. Oh, we got someone to come in. Okay. Oh, sorry. But we'd be able to pay the residual amount of the debt on the truck off in 5 years. The benefit of that is that you wouldn't need to have a referendum on the public debt, because it could be paid off in 5 years. And it would also mean that if we kept maintaining this, if we project the modeling into years forward, it would always mean that you would have enough money to have a truck and not have to look at having a spike in the contributions required. So, where do we stand? In 2020, the tax requisition for the fire service was $43,050. Where we need to be to have sufficient money for major capital, putting money aside for the truck in 2031, and maintain an operational budget that allows the department to keep its equipment up to date, allow them to have the training, as well as all the base costs like electricity, phone, insurance, etc., and repairs and such. We need to be at, we figured, about a $98,500. So the plan that we're putting forward to the community is that we ramp that up over 5 years. And as you can see, the increments would be $65,000 in 2021, $73,000 in 2022, $81,500 in 2023, $90,000 in 2024, and $98,500 in 2025. So basically, I mean, this is a big jump. There's no two ways about it. But what I was hoping I would like to show you is a comparison of the Sointula Fire Department against the other 3 fire departments in the regional district manages. And what we see here is that Sointula, the mill rate that we had this past was $36.62 per $100,000. So if you had a $300,000 home, you'd be paying just under $110 a year in taxes. The next high, that is by far the lowest mill rate in all of the regional district. The next highest one, which is Hyde Creek, which is the department I'm on, their mill rate is $97.27, which is almost 3 times as much as what the Sointula is. Then you look at Cole Harbor, which is $121 per 100,000, and Wass, which is an eye-watering $203 per 100,000. If you take a look at Sointula and Hyde Creek, That fourth column there shows you the assessed value, which the tax requisition is calculated around. Hyde Creek is slightly smaller, $6 million smaller than Sointula, but the operational budget there is $120,000, which is basically 3 times that of Sointula's for a smaller community. What we did was we did a bit of modeling, and we looked at the mill rate based on the 2020 assessed property values. And even if we went all the way up to the 98,500, the mill rate would be $83.80, which is lower than the Hyde Creek one. So basically, while we are looking at a substantial increase, the actual contribution that the department is asking for is less than any contribution of any other fire department. And so it is, if compared to what other communities are willing to support their fire department, this is actually manageable. And to take a look at the other way, one of the things that a fire department does is it provides not only protection at all times for the community, which is especially the case in Sointula, where you have water, it's water access to the ferry. I mean, in Hyde Creek, we have a strong mutual aid agreement with Port McNeill, but currently, Sointula would be considered semi-protected. Now, we did a study a few years back where we consulted some of the insurance companies here on the North Island as to what it would cost if you were a semi-protected fire department. And so the cost was about $544 per 100,000. Oh, looks like Tom's here. Okay, we got the chief with us now. Excellent. It would be $544 per 100,000, and but if you go to unprotected, the cost is about $1,000 per 100,000. Whereas if you had a hydrant system and could be declared a protected, your goes down to 352, 337 per 100,000. What this shows to me is that the fire department provides a significant savings to each property on the within the protected area, as long if you have insurance. I mean, if you happen to be rich enough that you don't need insurance, well, then it's not such a big issue. But for most people, having fire insurance is a fair-sized line in your annual budget. And the fire department does by having a fire department, the return on the payment is substantial. So is there no questions so far? Okay, excellent. Okay, so that being said, we can't go around and arbitrarily raise the rates. There is there has to be a process of electorate consent to do this, and I'm just going to try and do a bit of an explanation of what's that involved. So there are 3 ways that the regional district can go to the ratepayers in Sointula Fire Protection Area to get their agreement to a change that would allow the greater funding. The one that most people are aware is a referendum, which is basically you hold an election where you need to have a majority vote to determine the outcome, yay or nay. When you have a referendum, especially one that's outside of the election cycle, it's expensive. We're talking about $7,000 when you take into account advertising, having to get hire an electoral officer, because you have to go through the whole process of running an election. The second option is what's called a counter petition, where eligible electors have 1 month to cast a vote against the proposal being considered. If 10% of the electors vote against, the proposal fails and a referendum is needed to seek approval. But the cost of a counter petition is estimated at $1,000 because there is some advertising involved, but it's a far less expensive cost. And these costs will have to be borne by the fire department. Finally, there's a petition for service in which you basically go around and you try and get enough people to sign a petition for support. And that way you need to have 50% of the eligible electors sign it, and they have to represent over 50% of the assessed property value. This is a process that's good for small communities like Quatsino or Winter Harbor. For Sointula, it's just too big. It becomes impractical to try and to make this work. So for this reason, staff are okay. Who is an eligible elector? Okay, an eligible elector would be the property owner because they're the ones who will be, the taxes will be going towards. So from my understanding, if you're a renter, you're not an eligible elector, it would be your landlord. And as I said, one of the things that we're having to do is we're going to have to do an analysis on the community to identify who the eligible electors are. As we clarify who we recognize as an eligible elector, that would be posted and made aware. Everyone will be receiving, you'll be able to get a vote to actually go out and to submit if you are against the proposal. But one of the things that if we are going to do, if and when we go with the counter petition, we would have to lay out all the in the newspaper, clearly setting out the process, how the ballots can be picked up and how they can be submitted. And we would also be posting that on the website, so you don't have to come into McNeil to receive that. So, but basically, it's the property owners. If a property owner owns multiple properties, they get one vote. So that's basically an eligible elector. Hopefully that answers your question. So with that, that's basically the presentation. As I said, the department stands at a point in time where they need to get the resources to actually be able to effectively carry out the responsibilities they've taken on. That means not only just having the funds to turn on the lights in the hall, but to go out and get the training that they need. The training they need, make sure that the equipment they have is up to date and well maintained. As I said, the firefighting that the departments that we have nowadays has significantly changed. As I said at the beginning, I've got about 25 years in, Glenn's 21. Tom, I think, is over 35 years. And we can all say that, you know, back when we joined back in the 90s, or in Tom's case, probably the 80s, or things were a lot different. I think that things were a lot more informal, but those days are not with us. And as I said, I know I'm on an department that is well funded, and it gives us confidence to know that we have our equipment is up to date, that we have the training to know that we feel competent carrying out our duties, and that our officers feel that the community has its support. So I hope that this is something that the community can rally around. And as I said, if anyone has questions, please ask.
Yeah, just with regards to the training, I think that's a really important aspect, especially for Sointula. It's just the fact that, I mean, we don't get a lot of calls, which is a good thing, knock on wood. But other departments who are more active, like Port McNeill and Port Hardy, they get practice every other day. You know, when they're out in the truck, they get to actually, you know, they're learning the gear, they're working with people, they're getting information and education on the scenes. That's one thing where we sort of are more reliant on here, is actively training and getting us. We've been, Patrick's been doing an amazing job. Well, I guess the whole Fire Commission has been doing a great job of making training more available for us up here on the North Island. So we don't have to train necessarily everybody down in Victoria or Nanaimo or Comox, which is really expensive. So in that way, it's been really handy for us up here. But that's really important for us to have the local training, as well as the training available for, you know, all the certificates that we can't provide in-house. So it's more important for us to be focusing on our training as well, just to keep people both interested and safe and educated. So
okay, we have some more questions here. I'll make sure. Okay, it's from Nat, and that was to everyone, so I can recognize Nat. Is there a time frame for the next steps regarding pursuing a mill rate increase? My intent is to go to the board at the November meeting, which is 2 weeks this Tuesday, with the getting the board's assent to initiate a counter petition process. So we have to move fairly quickly if we want to be able to have this change enacted for 2021, so that we can move forward. So our budget has to be passed by March. It takes 1 month for the counter petition process, so that if we were to initiate in late November, it would be hopefully wrapped up with a result one way or the other in late December. Next question. How will it be determined which program we will get to vote on and when? Well, Joy, what we're putting forward is the budget increases that were set out in this presentation. What we would do is we would draft up a bylaw laying out that, and that would be what the ratepayers of Sointula would be voting against if they're against it. So it would be quite clear what people are considering. From Carmen, thank you very much about the present. Yes, thank you very much. We've much appreciated the support. Linda, our community would like to support the officers who are at risk personally if we are underfunded for COVID. Again, thank you very much. Yeah, no, I mean, and I'm hoping that those are the feelings of the community. This department, I think, actually, the 4 regional district departments, I think Sointula probably has the brighter future of them all. I'm on the High Creek department, really good department. We are in interior operations. We train hard. We have a really good budget. But at 54, I'm one of the young guys. And we, some of our effectives are guys that are going in on the attack are turning 65. I look at the Sointula department, and I wish our department had as many young people on it. And I've had a chance to go out and train with them. They train hard. They're enthusiastic. Kind of scary how enthusiastic they are. I remember when they did the auto extraction course. Port McNeill came over and showed the guys how to use the tools. The department just recently got Jaws of Life, which are a fabulous tool, something that High Creek doesn't actually have because we rely on Port McNeill. But yeah, and as I said, and then Glenn also doesn't is I think a bit modest. I mean, one of the most spectacular fires that we've had in the last 2 or 3 years was on Sointula, the Tarkinen fire. And living in Port McNeill and looking across there and seeing that glow, it was, wow, I sure hope everyone's knows what they're doing and is staying safe, because that was the big show. I mean, and fortunately, we do have a regional mutual aid agreement that allows departments to come to help one another. In that case, McNeil sort of came over in a water taxi to help out, and we all pulled together. But it's really good having Tom and Glenn as being regular members on the Fire Chiefs Association. And we look at Sointula as being one of the departments that steps forward and supports our regional activities. Okay, Michelle, what are we needing to do to help get community members aware? How can we support this? Okay, for one thing, we're going to put this presentation as being taped video, so it's going to be a link on it so people will know about it. You've probably noticed that on Facebook there was these advertisements that were popping up. That advertisement will be tweaked to let people go back and find out where the video is, and also the contents of this presentation, so that people can go and take a look at the numbers. If you think if you think something's not right, challenge us on it. If you think that, as I said, we definitely want to have this as open as possible. The last thing I want to have is the perception that the regional district is trying to pull something over on Sointulians and trying to jack up the money through some sort of covert operation. We want the dialogue. We want people to talk to us, but we really hope that you can that you can see through what we're presenting and give that support to Glenn, Tom, and the other members of the department. Next one, from Joy to everyone. If the number is correct, it looks like only 20 people attending. That is too bad. Guess us 20 will have to chat it up. Yes, please do. I very much appreciate you guys giving me an hour of your time. But we definitely need people to talk about it and let them know, why we're doing this. Next question. Yes, share the link on local Facebook sites. Yes, the presentation, the PowerPoint, I'll put it as a PDF so people, if you don't have PowerPoint, you'll be able to read it. We will make that available to on our website. We'll use the Resource Center. We'll use Facebook. We want to make sure that everyone has access to this. And again, tell people, call our office, talk to me, and I can I do one-on-one as well.
I think it was asked just which type would we be proceeding with. And I think that sort of a half of an idea we were hoping to get out of this meeting was if there was any kind of feedback that was questionable. We wanted to get it as much information out there and be as clear as we can so that everybody understands that this is coming from, there's been some animosity with the regional district and Sointula in the past. There's no dancing around that. We know that's a fact. So just to let you know that this is coming from our department. This is what we're pushing for, and nobody knows more than the guys over at the regional district as far as all the numbers that we just can't get into. So I appreciate all the work that Patrick's been doing for us for doing this. But what we were sort of hoping for is just to put our toe in the water to see what kind of feedback we'd get from the community. If there was some people who are nervous about how much they're going to be paying and that they don't maybe see that this is necessary and had some questions about it, then we'd probably be shying away from the counter petition. While it's simpler and most notably much cheaper, we could then just save the $1,000 there that we could potentially lose and go straight into the referendum. The idea being, $7,000 is a huge chunk when it's coming out of our training budget. That's 2 full sets of gear for out of your pocket eventually. So ideally, I think, I'm speaking just from my experience anyways, is that a counter petition would be ideal if we knew that we had the town's support, largely, and we weren't worried about that 10% margin costing us an extra $1,000 if we're going to go the other way anyway. So I think that's where I'm thinking in that department as far as our direction going through which channels we use. I think the counter petition is ideal if we can make it work.
And we got a note here from Linda supporting the counter petition. Is there any other comments? Well, okay, I guess. Well, what I think what we'll do is we'll move forward on the counter petition, but for those of you who participated, it'd be very much appreciated if, as well as the fire department, to be our ears on the ground, to let us know if you sort of see the trends that would sort of make the counter petition a precarious option. And if it does sort of looks like that we need to go to a referendum, we can make that call. We don't have to commit to a we can move the process ahead. But I think if we do a good job in letting people understand not only the needs of the department, but the fact that what's being asked is reasonable given what other communities do to support their department, I'm hoping that the argument will hold on its own. But I very much would appreciate if I could get, if people are still getting concerned to let me in the office know, and at that point we'll have further discussions to see whether or not we'll continue on that path or we just go full out with a referendum. I can speak from personal experience in the case of Hyde Creek, where we had to have we did a counter petition to get to borrow money for our current truck, and apparently one individual, Carmen agrees too, but one person went door to door and managed to get 10%, and we then had to go to a referendum, and boy, there were a lot of angry people when the community had to spend $7,000. So, okay, Nancy Wash, okay, to everyone, okay, lots of property owners are away, but the counter petition would be best. This seems to really engage community. This would support this. Thank you, Nancy. And Eldon also provides support. So, well, that's good. That's reassuring. As I said, we will proceed along that line, but I'd like to think that we have a good dialogue through the advisory committee and the fire department and through other relationships. So please keep us posted. But at this point in time, I will try and get the counter petition approved by the board at the next board meeting, and so that we can then launch it shortly afterwards. Is there any other questions or comments? I guess the other thing I'd like to ask is how do people like this as a way of communicating, especially given COVID? We've got some other issues that I'd like to discuss with the community at large. Street lights, invasive species. They've all been topics that we've discussed at the advisory commission that we really need to have this sort of conversation with Malcolm Island as a whole. Nancy seems to like it. That's great. Anyone else, yay or nay? Okay, the regional district likes it. Okay. Okay, we got Marjorie and Melody. Matt gives us graduate consent too. Carmen likes it. Linda. Oh, great. Okay, well, excellent. Well, and Michelle, good. So with that in mind, I'm hoping to get something going in about a month's time, as long as Hydro Cooperation gives you the materials, and we can start talking about streetlights. There's really, hey, Alden, great. We want to start talking about all our street lights are being converted over to LED lights, so it's an opportunity to ask, what kind of light we want. Okay, more issues, more interactive in the next meetings. Okay, good. Save the nice guy for March. Okay, okay, Joy. Let's talk at some point as to recommendations of how we can do make it more interactive. Okay. Okay. So with that in mind, I think that's a wrap. We'll continue to use Facebook and our website and the Resource Center to keep the community informed as what's going on. And please call our office if you want to have a chat about any of this. Okay.
And share amongst all your groups.
Yes, and talk it up in the community, please. Thank you. Okay. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a good night.
Thank you very much, Patrick. Thanks, Nicole.
Okay.